My name is Rosa Harper, and I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner. And I'm here today to share with you a little bit of what I know about Ayurvedic bodywork. And before I launch into my talk and share further, I'm going to start off with some prayers. So the prayers that I'm going to sing, they're a little bit lengthy, so thank you for bearing with me. These prayers are the traditional prayers that we sing at the Ayurvedic Institute, which is where I received my Ayurvedic training. The first prayer is to Ganesha. The second prayer is to Saraswati. And the third prayer is to the Guru. So I'm going to sing these. And again, thank you for your patience so I get through these prayers. Bowing to Dr. Lad and to all of the teachers in my life who have helped to share with me the wisdom of Ayurveda. Om Gananam Tva Ganapatim Havamahe Kavim Kavinam Upamashravastamam Jyeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspata Anaha Shrinvanu Tibihi Siddhasadanam Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada Siddhi Buddhi Shakti Sahita Shriman Mahaganadipataye Namo Namaha Nirvignam Kuru Yakundendu Tusharahara Dravala Yashu Pravastravritam Yavihinaha Varadandamandita Karaha Yashveta Padmahasana Ya Brahma Shita Shankara Pravritir Bihir Devai Sadahavandita Samahan Pahatu Sarasvati Bhagavati Nisheshadhyadhyapaha Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Gurur Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Okay, so welcome everybody. Our talk today is about Ayurvedic bodywork, unlocking the power of Ayurvedic bodywork. My name is Rosa Harper. I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner, a forever student of Ayurveda, and I've been practicing Ayurvedic bodywork in a Panchakarma setting for the past 5 years. This talk today is an offering of the Pranada Wellness Center. So I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about Pranada Wellness and what Pranada is currently up to. So the Pranada Wellness Center is housed very cozily at the Temple of Compassion in Burton, Texas. And we're currently offering educational events like this, mostly online. And we're also offering an annual immersive healing experience. It's a week-long retreat that's held every spring for the past several years at the Temple of Compassion. So these are incredible transformational healing experiences. It's a 5-day wellness retreat. The next one is going to be held March 15th through the 20th, 2025 at the TOC. And just to kind of raise awareness about these incredible events, I put together a few photos to share with you guys. These are from the retreat last year. So these are two of our Ayurvedic practitioners. These are third-year students of Dr. Laud's who came to teach some classes on Ayurveda and do seva. And they did an amazing job, and we'll have more teachers, Ayurvedic practitioners, coming to teach next year. Every participant that comes to the retreat gets a goodie bag filled with herbs and Ayurvedic tools to help them during their stay and beyond. The ashram is also the home of an amazing herd of Brahmin cows who are themselves facilitators and healers. Just being around these animals is extremely healing, and we were blessed last year to have 2 little babies to love on. So the cows really do create a beautiful sattvic environment that's good for healing. And as many of you probably know, a lot of the products, Pranada products, is also an offering of the Temple of Compassion, and they make really amazing medicines from the byproducts of the cows. All participants who come to the wellness retreats also eat a tridosic, completely organic diet, really high vibrational food. This is Sumama, our chef from last year, preparing some food. More kitchen fun. We also offer daily yoga classes, yoga asana classes by experienced yoga teachers. And our practitioners who are coming from the Ayurvedic Institute are also yoga teachers, so they can teach Ayurvedic adjustments, Ayurvedic poses to balance the doshas of the participants individually. And sort of the highlight of these events are our osteopathic physicians. So we have a team of osteopathic physicians. The director of the Wellness Center is an osteopathic physician, Oline Adams. Many of you coming from the Kriya Yoga community might already know him. And this is another one of our amazing osteopathic physicians, Christine Mitchell, doing an osteopathic session on a client. And as you can see, these are very subtle, very gentle, transformative sessions. So these physicians will do an intake with each participant, and then we'll do osteopathic manipulations to help them with their specific health issues. And these are it's a very subtle science that I'm going to leave it to Oline in his next talk to tell you more about this particular part of the retreat and what an osteopathic adjustment can do. Here's Oline working on a client last year. And as well as these amazing osteopathic treatments, we also give participants shirodhara, which is an Ayurvedic therapy that I'm going to be discussing more about today. So this is me doing shirodhara on a client. And I'll talk more about this, what this treatment does later. So the grounds themselves are just absolutely gorgeous. In the springtime, they are brimming with wildflowers. It's a really perfect time to be there. There's lots of space to rest. We also have these amazing greenhouses that are stewarded by Raman Baba, and they produce medicinals as well as organic vegetables there in the greenhouses. In addition to all of that, participants will get daily guided meditations by some of the resident swamis at the ashram. So that's a little bit about the wellness retreats and just how amazing they are. Last year, our wellness retreat fell during Holi, so there was a little impromptu color celebration, which was fun. Yeah, so that's Pranada Wellness. That's a little bit about Pranada. So if you're interested in Pranada Wellness and in attending one of these amazing events, I encourage you to check out the website, pranadawellness.com. We will have a registration page coming soon. And if you signed up for this talk, chances are you'll get an update when it's time to register for that event or learn more. Okay. So I'm going to launch into talking about Ayurveda. I wanted to just do a real brief introduction into Ayurveda for anybody who might be a little unsure about what it is or what it means. This figure to the right is Dhanvantari. He is sort of the patron saint of Ayurveda. There's a whole mythological story about him, which I won't get into, but I thought it apt to share his photo here, his photo, a representation of him, and bow to him. And so Ayurveda can be translated to mean the science of life. It is the oldest known healing science on the planet, and it comes from what we currently call India. And it addresses the health of the body, the mind, and the soul from all angles. And so it's truly a holistic science. It's a holistic science, and it's also a very complete science. So classical texts such as the Charaka Samhita, the Sushruta Samhita, and the Ashtanga Hridayam detail Ayurvedic philosophy, diet, lifestyle guidance, and even surgery. Shushrut was a surgeon. They did complex, very elegant surgery thousands of years ago. So that sort of blows a lot of people's minds when they learn that. And this tradition has been kept alive. It's an oral tradition. So these classical texts here are all written down in Ayurvedic sutras. These sutras are they're written in Sanskrit, and they're these poetic verses that are sort of meant to be memorized. They're meant to be sung. They're meant to be imbibed and to be lived. So if you meet an Ayurvedic practitioner, a master like Dr. Law, chances are he'll have a sutra for just about anything, any topic that's up for discussion, and he'll probably be able to recite thousands of these. They just live with him. It really is a living tradition in that sense. And I also want to just mention that, in my opinion and from my perspective, this tradition has been kept alive through the mothers of India, through Indian kitchens, through the kitchen pharmacies of Indian households. So if you are lucky enough to have grown up in an Indian household, chances are that Ayurveda has woven its way into your life already in many different ways. Oh, I also want to put a disclaimer that as an Ayurvedic practitioner, Ayurveda is not a licensed medical science here in the United States. So anything that I discuss during this talk is meant purely to be an educational offering, and is not meant to prescribe, to treat, to diagnose, anything like that that is in the wheelhouse of a licensed medical profession. So that's my disclaimer there. And we'll launch in. So speaking of the sutras are really where the juice of Ayurveda lives, where the real wisdom is living. And so to talk about how Ayurveda views health, I thought it best to pull a sutra from the classical texts. So I'm going to share with you here. This is Shushruta's definition of health. This is from the Sushruta Samhita. This was the first Ayurvedic sutra that I ever learned, and it really stuck with me. And it's the first one that I thought of when I thought of sharing with you guys about how Ayurveda views health, the Ayurvedic approach to health. So because these things are meant to be sung, and because I learned it in a song, I'm going to sing it, and then we'll kind of break it down piece by piece. So this is not a classical tune, but it's the tune that I learned this sutra to. So it's how it lives in my mind, and it's how I will share it. So I'll sing it and again, break it down. Samadosha samagnischa samadatu malakriyaha prasanatmendriyamanaha svasta itya pitiyate. I love singing this one. It just makes me kind of want to dance. So this translation that we're given here is the one who is established in the self, and the word for that in the self is svasta. The one who is established in the self, who has balanced doshas, balanced agni, properly formed dhatus, proper elimination of malas, and who has properly functioning bodily processes, including the mind and the senses, that are quiet and content. This is called a healthy person. So I'm going to break down these principles a little bit further. And here on the right is a drawing that Dr. Law drew to illustrate the sutra. And I love his drawings. He teaches a lot through illustrations, which is very good for right brain learners like me. And the first part of this sutra, this first part of this definition of health, has to do with balanced doshas. So many of you might know what a dosha is. A dosha, it's one of the first things people learn in Ayurveda. And a dosha, to put it simply, is the physiological manifestation of the elements. So we have 5 elements: ether, air, fire, water, and earth. In Ayurvedic philosophy, these are the elements that we're dealing with, and doshas are the physiological manifestations of these elements. So we have 3 main doshas, and I'll just go through this really quick. We have vata. You can see Dr. Ladd has drawn vata down here, kind of in the low abdomen of this little illustrated person. And vata dosha, he's drawn it here because the therapeutic site of vata dosha is the colon, kind of in the pelvis region. So vata dosha is the physiological manifestation of the ether and the air elements. So an easy way to know that vata is out of balance or is a little bit high is if you have gas and bloating in your low abdomen. That's a sign that vata dosha is high. And again, I'm not going to get really into the nitty-gritty of all how to diagnose the doshas, but that's just a little bit about how vata can show up physiologically in the body. Pitta dosha is our next dosha. And it is the physiological manifestation of fire and water. So the home site or the therapeutic site of Pitta dosha is sort of in the lower part of the stomach where stomach acid is produced. Again, that fire and that water, physiological manifestation of that fire and that water principle, as well as the small intestine. So you know you have a Pitta imbalance if you're having, let's say you're having acid reflux, or you're having excess heat in the body, or you're just extremely hungry, you're metabolizing, your fire's burning out of control. If you're running hot, if you have hot rashes, these are all examples of excess heat in the body and excess Pitta dosha. Kapha is our 3rd dosha, and this is the physiological manifestation of the earth and the water element. And its therapeutic site or its home site is sort of in the chest, as well as the upper stomach. So you know you have a kapha imbalance. First of all, if you're carrying excess weight, kapha is building. It's the dosha that really builds the body. So if you have a little too much building going on of the body, if you have excess mucus, mucus is a kapha tissue. So if you have excess mucus, excess phlegm, things like that, that's a sign that kapha is high. So that's a little bit about the doshas. And before I go further, I want to address this word balanced. The Sanskrit word in the sutra was sama dosha. And sama does not mean, balanced does not mean everything's exactly the same. Balanced means that everything is harmonious, that all of the doshas based on your particular constitutional ratio of doshas is balanced. Is operating harmoniously. So me as a Pitta predominant person with Kapha secondary, I know that my doshas are balanced when I'm not experiencing excess, like when things are just, my body's humming along and running the way that nature intended for it to. So balance is very dynamic. And as our bodies change with age, and as we move through different seasons, like the seasons of the year and our seasons of life, the factors, our environments are always changing. So our balance is, we're going to have to constantly, it's a balancing act. We're constantly moving in dynamic balance and trying to strike balance with the world as it meets us every day. So it's a dynamic process. Okay, so our next principle here is Agni, balanced Agni. So Agni is the Sanskrit word for, you could say, for fire. Literally means fire, and it can also be Agni in our body, can also be translated to, you could say, your metabolic capacity. So it's your capacity to transmute information into knowledge, to transmute food into healthy tissue, and eventually into consciousness. It's your body's ability to process and transmute. And Dr. Ladd has illustrated Agni here, this little fire. And this is the home, this little fire here in the stomach is the home of Jatara Agni. So this is one of our main sites of Agni, of metabolic fire in the body, is there in the stomach. And so if Agni is low, you're not going to be able to process all of your food. You're not going to be able to process all of your thoughts and all of the experiences you have. So keeping the fire in your body kindled is a very important health principle in Ayurveda. I could go on and on about Agni, but I won't because of time. So we're going to move on to dhatus. So balanced dhatus. So the dhatus are, it's the Sanskrit word for the tissues of the body. Dr. Ladd has written them out here to the right of this little figure. And the first dhatu, I'll just run through them really fast. The first one is rasa dhatu. So rasa is plasma. You could translate it to be plasma. I like to think of it as sort of like IV fluid. It's just that clear, nutrient-dense first end product of digestion that goes into the bloodstream and supports the growth of all the other tissues. So next, the next dhatu we have, which is fed by rasa dhatu and formed from rasa dhatu, is rakta, which is the blood. And the next dhatu down, again, each of these feed into each other and start to form the other, is mamsa, or the muscle tissue. And then we have meda, or the fat, subcutaneous fat tissue. Next, we have ashti, which is the bone. And then we have maja, which is the nervous system, the nerves and the nervous tissue. And then we have shukra and arthava, which is the male and the female reproductive fluid, respectively. So if your doshas are out of balance, and then this throws Agni out of balance, and you're not able to digest all of your food properly, and so undigested food stuff goes into rasa dhatu, it's going to start impacting the health of your tissues. So properly balanced and formed dhatus. This is our third principle in Shushrut's definition of health. Fourth principle is proper elimination. So kriya malaha, mala kriyaha. So this means that we are eliminating everything that comes, all the waste products in our body are easily and completely eliminated. So this means you are having a complete bowel movement every day, and complete, meaning that it's a well-formed, everything moves out of the body that should be moving out of the body. It also means that you're able to, you don't have a blockage in your sweat channels. You're able to sweat well when appropriate, and that you're able to urinate in the appropriate time, in the appropriate amount, so that your malas, your waste products, are leaving the body. And again, if these things are off up here, chances that your elimination is going to be incomplete increases. So this fifth principle is my favorite, and is, I think, what kind of sets Ayurveda apart from almost any other healing science I've ever found. And that's the last part of that sutra, prasanat mindriyamanaha. And one way that that can be translated is to mean that your senses, your indriya, and your mind, manaha, are filled with bliss, prasana. So to have your senses be permeated with good feelings. So your mind is just thinking, feels good. Your mind is clear and filled with bliss. You're hearing, you're smelling, all of your sense organs that are feeding your mind are perceiving bliss. And when I first heard that, I was just like, is that possible? I feel this like that. But thankfully, I've been graced to know people who do live like that, and to learn more about Ayurveda and more about how that state of being is possible in these bodies, in this life. So that's my little, and that's really, these things are really what all the Ayurvedic therapies that I'm going to share with you are aimed at supporting. They're aimed at the balance of the physiology and the realization that we are Satchitananda, that we are existence, we are consciousness, we are bliss. And again, just so thankful to my teachers and to those who have kept this healing tradition alive. Okay, so moving right along, the first part of Ayurvedic therapeutics that I wanted to introduce to you guys and bring in is marma therapy. So this is very similar to acupressure or acupuncture, which people might be more familiar with. And many of the points, many of the marma points line up perfectly with traditional Chinese medicine points. And you can see in this illustration here, this is taken from Dr. Lott's book of the same name. His book is called Marma Points of Ayurveda. It's an extremely informative book. It's a really great read. And he details in his book, it's co-authored by a woman named Anisha Dhruve, who's been a real pioneer in the field of marma therapy. She's also trained in traditional Chinese medicine. And this book kind of goes through all the marma points. It also shows you where all of the TCM points and explains like the differences and the similarities in all of them. So it's very helpful if you have a mind for that kind of stuff. And there, Dr. Lott calls these points the gateway to the inner pharmacy. And I love this term. And like we know with acupressure and with Chinese medicine, with acupuncture, stimulating certain points elicits a healing response in the body. Now, marma therapy does not use needles, but we'll use pressure and awareness and intention and different tools to stimulate the points. And it starts to awaken the body's innate healing response. There are about 117 points that Dr. Lott has identified. Different people have different numbers, but there's over 100 for sure. And they usually land at places in the body where there's a lot of crossover in between different tissues, like arteries, veins, tendons, bones, and ligaments. They relate to specific organs, channels, pathologies, and they can be a really good diagnostic tool. This is one of the ways I like to use marma on my own body, is I'll just kind of like feel around when I'm giving myself a massage and be like, oh, like that point is really sore. I wonder what's going on there. So if you find on your own body that there's a very tender area, it might be interesting to see if it's landing on a marma point and to see what that marma point is reflecting. It's also related to the channel of the mind. So in Ayurvedic theory, we call this channel Mano Vaha Shrotas. And so this is the pathway of the mind. And the field of the mind is all over the body. It runs through the whole body. And the mukha, or the opening of that pathway, of that channel, are these marma points on the surface of the body. So to stimulate these marma points has a direct impact on Manovāha Shrotas, on the pathway of the mind. And we know the mind is very powerful. And so it's just a testament to how powerful it can be to work on these points. It can really impact the mind, it can impact the nervous system, and through that, it will impact the physiology. These are primary fields of action in Ayurvedic bodywork. So many of the oil therapies that I'll be talking about later work through these marma points. These are very important points to know. So I thought it might be interesting to do a little practice, to do a little self-marma practice. So anybody who wants to, you can find a comfortable seat, and I'm going to share with you 5 different marma points that can be used to treat various things. So the first marma point is sort of known as the master marma point. And this is called Adipati. It's also called Murdni. And in Kriya Yoga, we refer to it as the fontanelle. So if you have been practicing Kriya, you probably know where this point is. If you want want a tip on how to find it, there's a few ways. It's really just the apex of the head. So one way to find it is to take the palm, to take the sort of the base of your wrist and just place it onto your brow, sort of onto the very top of your nose, and where your middle finger falls is probably very close to Adipati or to Mordni. Another way to find it is to, from that same place, take one hand, put the other hand on top of it. So now you have 8 fingers, or 8 anguli, the width of a finger, and then add 2 more fingers to that. So you have 10 anguli from basically from the tip of the nose, from the top of the nose, and that's Adipati. You can also trace from the very apex of your ear to the top of your head. So this is Adipati. So I encourage all of you to stimulate this point in whatever way feels most nourishing and most balancing for your body. Maybe you'll add a little more pressure or a little lighter pressure. Maybe you'll do some circles or some like kind of rocking stimulation, whatever feels best. And I'll explain a little bit about what it does. So again, this is a master marmani. They say that it connects the individual consciousness, or jiva, with the universal consciousness, or shiva. It also benefits cerebral spinal circulation within the brain and the body, nourishes the nervous system, and impacts as well, supports the endocrine system. So it does a lot. It does a lot of good things, as we know. And another little point is that Dr. Ladd mentions is that you want to hold these points for about 90 seconds. We're going to be breezing through this a little quicker than that, but about 90 seconds is a good amount of time to spend on a point. So the next points I want to share with you, marma points, are the brew and a shrew. So these are 3 points above and below your eyebrows. And so if you want to take a few fingers, if you want to warm up your hands and kind of stimulate some energy in your hands, that kind of helps when you're doing marma therapy. So you can do that if you want to. And then you can sort of just grab your eyebrows, grab this medial portion of your eyebrows, and just give it a good squeeze. Maybe it's a little tender. I don't know how it's feeling on you, but mine are feeling tender. So this middle point is the first point. And then, this innermost medial point is the first point. And then you have the middle point here, which is sort of right in the middle of the eyebrow. And then you also have points on the lateral side, on the lateral part of the eyebrow. And so just giving your eyebrows a good squeeze like that can help to release tension in the body. If you find that there's an especially tender point on the right side, it could be indicating that there's something going on with your spleen. With your liver on the right side, relates to the liver. So it is diagnostic for liver pathologies, or just congestion. And then on the left side can be indicative of things going on with the spleen. This can also promote frontal lobe circulation. It benefits the eyes and the lacrimal glands. So we have Adipati, we have brew and a shrew. And third is Oshta. I think this is an important one. This is one that relates to the Chinese medicine points. And this is located in the middle of the philtrum. So it's right above, in that little dip above your upper lip and below your nose. So this is called Oshta. And stimulating this point can help to regulate the flow of prana to the brain. It can benefit speech disorders and can actually restore consciousness. If you're feeling faint, or if somebody near you faints, this is a good point to gently stimulate to help increase prana to the brain. Okay, the fourth point I want to share is called Upastamba. So this is located in the second intercostal space, lateral to the sternum. This is a lung point, and you're going to find it by finding your collarbones and tracing down from maybe about the midpoint of your collarbones down into that first depression. So that's your first intercostal space. So you're going to go down one more rib into that next depression, and that's approximately apastamba. So this means pillar of support. I find that kind of vigorously stimulating this marma, my body really likes that. And this helps to stabilize the flow of prana to the heart, and it benefits the lungs and releases suppressed emotions. So this is a good one for any kind of lung disorder. I think it can be beneficial for asthma, people with asthma, and just the heart in general. So kind of just get energy flowing into the lungs and the heart. Apastamba. So the fifth marma point I want to share with you guys is Angushta. This is one of my favorites. This is basically in the middle of the thumb web. So right in this meaty spot between the forefinger and the thumb, you're going to want to get right in there and just press, massage that area until you find a tender spot. If you are lucky enough to not have a tender spot there, then you deserve a prize. There's always something tender in here for me. So this is Angushta Marma, center of the thumb web. So the thumb in Ayurvedic anatomy relates to the head and the brain. And so this can help relieve headaches. It can help with vertigo. It can relieve congestion and release emotional tension. So this is a really nice one to massage if you're dealing with any of those things. Great. And so you can do marma therapy. You can use an essential oil. If you have an essential oil that you really like, you can use that to stimulate these marma. There's other tools. Dr. Ladd has tuning forks that he likes to use for stimulating marma, but really just some loving fingertips and your awareness can go a very long way. Okay, so the next thing that I want to bring in and share with you guys, it has been a big part of my learning adventure with Ayurvedic bodywork, is polarity therapy. So this is not a part of classical Ayurveda. You're not going to find this in Ayurvedic texts, but it very much was introduced to me through the field of Ayurveda, and Dr. Ladd really emphasizes the importance of polarity therapy when he teaches marma therapy. We'd start off every marma sequence that we would do in class with polarity holds. And so polarity therapy was coined and created by this little cutie here named Randolph Stone. So Randolph Stone was born in 1890 and he lived to the ripe age of 91. He was a spiritual seeker since early childhood and went into the healing profession, went into the medical profession, sort of as part of his spiritual journey. He really believed in healing people as seva, healing people as part of a spiritual path, and using medicine to help people. And I put here that he developed polarity after meeting his guru, which is true. This man pictured to the right is Maharaj Sawan Singh. And Randolph Stone lived a householder's life. He was always a spiritual seeker. He ended up meeting a woman who was a nurse and also worked in natural therapeutics, and they got on really well. She was quite a bit older than him and died before he did. And so after she passed away, after living his householder's life, he threw himself pretty much into a search for God. So he memorized the Bhagavad Gita and read all of these found Eastern traditions and Eastern religions, and eventually found his guru. And after he met his guru, polarity therapy was sort of born and synthesized a lot of what he had learned. And he attributes it to the ancient. He doesn't really take credit for the body of work known as polarity therapy. And if you read his books, he's really taking Ayurvedic concepts and putting them in Western language. I encourage anybody who's interested to pick up his books. He has a 2-volume set of books called Polarity Therapy, and they're really amazing texts filled with incredible illustrations. So he operated a free clinic in India while maintaining his practice in Chicago. I thought this was interesting because that's exactly what Dr. Law does. And here we go. And then, so he taught, and then he started to teach seminars all over the United States about polarity therapy. And eventually he gained a lot of attention and was filling up auditoriums. And when he was 83, at the height of his career, actually, he just stopped. He just kind of, he was just done. And then he moved to India and spent the last decade of his life in meditation, but left polarity and many other teachers, and it survives. This picture here is one concept of polarity therapy, which I find to be pretty important, and it shows the rulership of each of the fingers to an element. So the thumb is ruled by ether, the index finger is ruled by air, the middle finger is ruled by fire, the water finger, or the ring finger, is ruled by water, and then the pinky is earth. And I find this easy to remember because space is the most predominant element. We are mostly space, and so our thumb. So these are in order from the predominance, the pervasiveness of these elements. That makes sense to me. So here are a few illustrations from his books. Again, his books have beautiful illustrations in them. And this one on the left on the right might be pretty familiar. This is a symbol used in the medical profession, and it also represents some Vedic concepts. So in Vedic philosophy and in Ayurvedic anatomy, we have 2 main currents that run through the body. We have a positive current on the right side, which is known as Pingala, and we have a negative current on the left side, which is known as Ida. And so these currents move through the body, and where they cross these are what we know as the chakras, And so this point, this column in the middle, is representative of Sushumna. So people who practice Kriya are familiar with that. We use these terms in Kriya Yoga. And the Sushumna represents the neutral. And in polarity therapy, you're trying to get to neutral. You're always trying, and that's really another word for probably balance. You're always trying to find this neutral point. So balancing polarities, balancing positives with negatives. That is the whole idea with polarity therapy. And so there are different types of polarity therapy. I was lucky enough in the massage program I went to in New Mexico to have extensive training in polarity therapy. I think we had over 300 hours of it. And so we learned treatments, earth treatments, air treatments, water treatments, all these treatments, these different polarity sequences for balancing the elements. You also have sattvic polarity, which is very gentle and aimed at bringing more sattva into the person. You have rajasic polarity, which is more rocking and a little more active, which is aimed at balancing, bringing in more rajas if it's needed. And then you have tamasic therapies, which are heavier, denser, more pressure, and that's aimed at grounding and bringing in more tamas if tamas is needed. So that's a little bit about polarity therapy as I understand it. And a very simple example of how polarity makes its way into Ayurvedic bodywork. So you have your hands, again, you have your right and your left sides dominated by these different energies, your right hand being more positive and your left hand being more negative. So if I'm working on a client, I'm generally going to want to be on their right side so that I can have my left hand making easy contact with the superior part of the body, which is also a positive pole. And I can have my right hand, which is positive, making contact with the inferior part of their body, which is negative. So you want to be generally putting a positive to a negative and a negative to a positive. This is a very simple way of understanding balancing polarities. And it can be infinitely complex. There are polarities within polarities within polarities. So again, if this is something that interests you, I really encourage you to look up Randolph Stone and pick up his books. Very, very interesting stuff. So now we're going to get into the oily stuff, the oily terrain. So oil is a huge theme in Ayurvedic bodywork, and there's really good reasons for it. So sneha is the word for oil or oil therapy in Sanskrit, and it means love. It's another word for love. So to add oil to the body is a way of showing love. The qualities of oil you can compare with love. And the story that comes to my mind when I think about that, and forgive me if I am butchering the story in any way, but I believe that there's a story from the Bible where Mary Magdalene has a vessel of oil, some very precious oil in a very, expensive container. And she breaks it open. She smashes open the vessel and pours it onto Jesus. And the other disciples get upset about this. How wasteful. Why? How does she have the right to, who is she? Who does she think she is to do this? And Jesus stopped them, and she's like, you don't realize what she's doing. You don't realize what a gesture this is that she's doing. And so, honestly, every time I perform abhyanga, like I have this feeling of just like, your oil is expensive. It's a precious thing and you're using a lot of it, but you're doing it out of devotion and out of love. And there really is something magical about that. And we'll get into that more when we talk about abhyanga in just a few minutes. So oil also has this amazing ability to pull toxins out of the body and out of the skin. It can kind of clean the body. It can dislodge dirt. It can dislodge things that are kind of stuck into the tissues. And this is internal and external. People who go through Ayurvedic cleansing programs like Panchakarma will be drinking oil. They'll usually be drinking ghee internally, and it has the same effect on the inner tissues to sort of dislodge toxins and to bring doshas that are maybe stuck in the wrong place, to bring them back into circulation so they can be eliminated. So it can detox the tissues. I also put this picture of boots here because I've heard someone say, maybe it was Guruji, that the body is a leather bag. The body without the soul, it's just this tissue, it's just this skin. And so to take care of leather, like, we need to use oil. It's the best thing for skin. So it promotes rejuvenation of the tissues, specifically targets vata. So oil is specifically indicated for high vata, and vata is at the root of, the classical texts say, about 80% of health issues. So this will help a lot of health issues if used correctly, the application of oil. It also works through these marma points like we talked about, and is extremely nourishing to the nervous system. So that's why I've put an illustration here of a nerve fiber, because it is covered in a fatty layer. It's covered in this lipid layer, or this myelin sheath. This myelin sheath is extremely important to protect the nerve and to keep it insulated from the environment, and to keep it operating and able to communicate well. And so applying oil to our bodies also helps to nourish the nervous system on a broader level. And different qualities of different oils are going to be balancing for different doshas. So we're going to go into that next. Common types of oils. Sesame oil is probably the oil that's most commonly used in Ayurveda. It has a ton of benefits. It has lots of minerals and nutrients. I believe it has magnesium. It has things in it that are going to be really good for your muscles. And it is also pretty tridoshic. It does have a heating quality to it. So it's a little bit heating in nature, which means that if it's the height of summer and you're a pitta person who's breaking out in heat rashes, don't apply sesame oil all over your body, please. So just know that's one sort of contraindication to using sesame. Sunflower is another common oil. It's a little more affordable than sesame. It's a little less heating than sesame, so it can be used in place of sesame. Coconut oil for that pitta person in the middle of summer would be a really good choice because it's cooling. You're gonna get good benefits, good hydration and good benefits from it the same way you would with other oils, but it's not gonna overheat the body. But just keep in mind, if you love using coconut oil, maybe use it less in the winter because it is so cooling and you don't want to overcool. Flax oil is another good oil that's used. I typically do not use this for body oleation, but it is a good oil to use. I have heard Dr. Lod say several times that it can be really good for women who have fibrocystic changes in the breasts. Doing a breast massage with flax oil on a daily basis before showering can be beneficial for that condition because it does promote this lymph flow and has this sort of, we would call it a lakana, I think a lakana or a bedana action in Sanskrit, which means it can kind of break up fibrous masses. Almond oil is also a great oil, tridoshic, nourishing. Almonds are super, super nourishing and promoting of ojas or vitality. It's a little expensive, just to note that about almond oil. Mustard oil is great for kapha people. It's great for people who have excess kapha or even vata. It's very heating. It can be good for sore muscles. Olive oil is very popular in the Middle Eastern countries, also a great oil. It does also have a heating property. Castor oil is a really incredible oil that I usually just use sort of on certain areas of the body if it's indicated. It also has a sort of this ability to break up masses, and it's great for, many people do castor oil packs over the liver or over the low abdomen. You can do a full body castor oil massage. Just know that it's going to be really sticky. It's a very dense oil, but you can do that. And it does have this interesting quality where if you have high toxicity in the body, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. So in Ayurveda, the word for an accumulation of sort of metabolic waste, in the Western mind would maybe call it toxins, but in Ayurveda we call this ama. So if you have high ama, so if you have a lot of metabolic waste, maybe your tongue is very coated, that's a way to see how much metabolic waste you're carrying. Castor oil can still be indicated. If you do, generally you don't want to be adding oil to a body that needs to detox, that has accumulated waste in it. I hope that makes sense. Okay, and another important thing is buy the highest quality of oil that you can afford. You want to buy oil that you would eat. You don't want to put anything on your body that you wouldn't want to put in your mouth and swallow. This is my general rule because you are eating it. Your body is going to absorb these oils and metabolize them. So buy something that you would feel comfortable eating. And yeah, I have to say, reading that label, making sure there's not artificial fragrances, making sure there's not words that you don't understand, making sure it's something that you would feel comfortable eating if you're going to put it on your body. So essential oils and attars, these are also something that we use a lot in Ayurvedic therapies. Attars, these are what I like to use most, and I think this is more of a traditional Ayurvedic fragrant oil. So an attar is used distilled similarly to an essential oil, but it's used in a medium. It's distilled in a medium of sandalwood oil. I don't know what that exactly looks like in real time, but that's what I have read. And they do have that sort of earthy sort of sandalwood undertone to them. And they're lovely. There's a company called Muzda Enterprises that sells really nice attars. I like to buy the attars from them, and I'll share information on that company at the end of the presentation. Essential oils are also very amazing. And just know that these are very strong oils. especially if you're using something that is highly aromatic, like eucalyptus, for example. You're going to want to dilute it and just use caution when you're working around eyes, around the mouth, around mucous membranes, because they can be yeah, they can be very intense and can irritate the mucous membranes of the body. So this is a caveat. You wouldn't want to eat an essential oil, but you can put them on your body. Okay, like I mentioned earlier, essential oils are great tools for marma. If you don't have time to just sit around stimulating your marma points, you can anoint them with a nice essential oil that's balancing, and that can have an effect throughout the day. And different oils to balance different doshas. I've wrote a few here. So nutmeg is one of Dr. Lott's favorites. I see him use this a lot on his clients in Panchakarma. And it is a mild painkiller. It's a mild analgesic. It's pretty tridoshic. It does have a bit of heat to it. So maybe use caution with pitta. But that's a great oil to use. It's also great if you have insomnia. Adding a little bit of nutmeg oil to the marma points of the head if you're having trouble sleeping is a nice little tip to help yourself wind down. This word here is jadamamsi. This is an endangered herb. It's extremely good for Vata dosha, and I love it, but I don't use it because it's over harvested, but it's there in the classical texts. Henna is also a really beautiful, warming oil that's good for Vata and Kapha. Pitta balancing oils, vetiver or kus. Kus is I believe, the name of the attar. This is a great balancer for pitta. I love the smell of it too. Lavender and rose is also great for pitta dosha. So just a little bit about the use of oils. They definitely make their way into Ayurvedic therapies. And again, this idea of having your senses be filled with bliss, like just having what you smell be balancing to your mind and balancing to your whole system and filling you with bliss. This is one of the reasons that these are such great tools in Ayurvedic bodywork. So next we're going to talk about abhyanga. This is one of my favorites. This is sort of one of the queen of the Ayurvedic therapies, and it really is the royal treatment. You can see there are 4 hands here. You traditionally have 2 therapists working in sync with each other, and they're going to be using about 8 ounces of herbalized oil over the client. Abhi means towards and anga means limbs. So as they're working, you are moving lymph and fluid from the limbs, from the extremities, up the body and sort of towards the heart, back into circulation. And again, it's traditionally practiced with 2 therapists working in sync. The way that I have learned abhyanga, one therapist will be at the head, the other therapist will be at the feet. So again, this is bringing in this concept of polarity therapy. You're balancing polarities just from the beginning there. So one person's working on the head and the shoulders, the other person's massaging the feet and the legs. And then after that's done, they join up and they work in sync with the same rhythm, the same flow, the same pressure, same strokes up and down the body, and massage the whole body front and back. It's a really dreamy treatment. There's something about having 4 hands operating in the exact same way that just disengages, like the mind can't really track on what's happening, and the person is able to sort of let go and bliss out really quickly. It's a really nice way to treat yourself. It's a nice way to treat another person too. It's a ceremony. So when we do abhyanga in the clinic, we start with a mantra. So we start with a prayer and we start holding hands. So the therapist and the client are joined hands, sort of clients on the table, but there's a circuit that's sort of created, and we pray. And so we honor the person on the table as the living form of God. And we honor ourselves as vessels, as as the power of God is working through us to honor this person. So there's really an invocation of the divinity that we all carry, permeates the room, in my experience, and is one of the reasons why this treatment is so powerful. And these treatments are usually followed by a steam bath. So the reason being, you want the oil, you want to open up the pores and let that oil penetrate as deeply as it can. Dr. Lod will say that you should do abhyanga 7 days in a row, and especially in the context of a cleansing program like panchakarma. And each day the oil will penetrate deeper into a deeper dhatu until all 7 dhatus have been reached. So not everybody can afford to go get a 2-person abhyanga every day, or even once a week or once a year. These can be very expensive treatments. So you can absolutely do abhyanga as self-care. And I'm going to get into that in the next couple slides. I'm going to go through how to do a self-abhyanga. So it can be done just as routine self-care every day before you shower, or a couple times a week, perhaps. And it can also is usually done during a cleansing program like panchakarma. So some of the benefits: it pacifies all the doshas, especially vata dosha, promotes strength, induces sound sleep, enhances tissue growth. Like we said before, the leather bag of the body, it benefits the skin, the joints, and the ligaments, and gently detoxifies the tissues of the body. And it supports just a feeling of love, a feeling of self-love, and if you're doing an abhyanga, love for others. So indications: weakness, fatigue, high vata, pre-panchakarma, and just part of your daily self-care. Contraindications: menstruation is a contraindication generally for abhyanga. It's a contraindication for most of these therapies, and that's just because during menstruation, the vayus, or the energy, the prana of the body is moving down. So there's a downward current that you want to support, because menstruation is a cleansing phase. And to activate the different directional energies of the body could disrupt that. The same with pregnancy. Severe debilitation is also a contraindication, as is high toxic load. Like we said earlier, if you have a lot of toxins in the body, adding a bunch of oil on top of it could potentially clog the channels further. So you're gonna make sure that you are eliminating the mala, that you are cleansing, that those pathways of elimination are open before you do an oil therapy. And obviously acute disorders, if you've just had surgery, if you're undergoing chemo, and also if it's very cloudy, wet weather. Cloudy, wet weather is very much like oil. Oil is wet, it's heavy, and to put a bunch of heaviness on top of a very heavy environment could be exacerbating. Also, if you have high kapha, so people who have lots of excess kapha already have a lot of excess oil in the body. Kapha is naturally oily and lubricated, so you don't necessarily need this therapy if you have high kapha. So moving on, self-abhyanga. I'm going to start with some practical tips, because working with oil is messy, and it's good to kind of have some safety nets already going before you just launch into it. So again, choose a high quality oil. And we've talked about this already. Heavy warming oils for vata, lighter cooling oils for pitta, and for kapha, light and warming oils. You want to be in a place where you can stay warm while you apply the oil, and that's private, and that's away from drafts. You want to use towels to protect the surfaces. Oil spreads. It's just its nature to spread. So protect your floors, do what you can to protect your surfaces because the oil it'll spread. And if you can, I recommend using a dedicated towel to for after you shower. So when you do abhyanga, you're going to be doing this before you get in the shower. And there's reasons for this. Again, that shower is going to act like a steam. It's going to help your pores open so the oil can penetrate and do the work on a deeper level. And you're also going to wash off a lot of the oil, excess oil that you don't need. The hot water is going to help to do that. And then you'll have a towel that you can kind of wipe off the residual oil. You don't want to use soap to clean off the oil off your body. You want to leave a little bit of a sheen. You want there to be a little bit of a layer on your body after you're done. And just like that myelin sheath, this is going to help insulate you from your environment, from the craziness of the world that we know is there. It will literally help to insulate your nervous system. So you want to leave that little bit of a film of oil on your body after you're done. And this one is important. Wipe down the bathtub after you shower. An oily bathtub floor is dangerous. So just make sure you've wiped it down. You can keep some people keep dish soap in there and just kind of wipe that down to get the oil off. Yeah, just please be careful getting in and out of the shower with oily feet, and then wipe your shower floor down afterwards. Another practical tip, I'm going to share with you guys the way that I get oil out of linen. So if you are doing daily abhyanga and then you're wiping yourself off with that dedicated towel, you're going to want to wash that towel separately from your other laundry, because eventually, like, you'll feel it'll start to get heavy with oil. And the way that I get oil out of linens, like I said, wash it separately from your other stuff. And you're going to want to soak it. Soak it in a solution like OxyClean. It's the only product that I've found. I'm not saying there are not other amazing products out there. If you know of them, please let me know. But OxyClean has worked really well for me. So I'll get my towel or my linens or whatever, and I'll soak them in hot water and a very generous amount of OxyClean, like way more than it tells you to use on the bottle. Like I use a scoop for a very oily towel. I would use half to a full scoop, and I would soak that in very hot water for at least an hour. And then when I'm ready to wash it, I'll wash it in hot water with an extra rinse cycle. So that'll help to pull any of that residual product out of the linen. And I've had sheets for years. I've had sheets that have been completely saturated in oil from doing abhyangas on people that I've had for years, and they don't smell. And so you can work with your linens. You don't have to throw them away. And line drying is best. Do not put things that are potentially still oily in a hot dryer. If you're gonna dry your stuff, make sure it's really well washed and dry it on a low setting. There are many stories that I could tell you about. We don't have time, but there are many stories I could tell you about, you know, piles of oily clothes that have been like left in hot cars that have spontaneously combusted. And you want to be careful if you are working with oil and heat. So that's probably never going to happen to you. But in clinics where we have tons of oily stuff, it does happen. So just know, no oily stuff, potentially oily stuff in a hot dryer. And you'll know there's still oil on your towel if it gets out of the dryer and it has that rancid oil smell. So this is why just letting that OxyClean or whatever product you use really digest that oil out of it before you wash it. That's my tip for laundry. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so moving on, we're quickly running out of time. I'm going to walk you guys through a self-abhyanga routine. So this is how you could potentially, ideally, do an abhyanga in your own space. So you want to give yourself at least 15 minutes, create a cozy environment. If you're in a cold If your bathroom's cold, you can use a space heater. That's what I usually do. You're going to want to warm your oil before applying it. And this is one simple way you could do that here. You can just get hot water from a kettle, put it in a jar or a mug, and put your bottle of oil in that, and it's going to warm through in a few minutes. Now be careful about, this is a bottle, this is a great kind of bottle to get. You can buy it at like Sally Beauty Supply or something like that. This the kind of plastic they use in these bottles is pretty heat resistant. Not all plastic is like that. Some plastic will warp, so just be careful about what plastic you're using. If you want to use glass, that's ideal. You can use a crock pot. A crock pot is a great way to warm oils, and you can use like a glass oil, what, I don't know the right word for it, but it's like olive oil, an olive oil bottle, like a plain glass with one of those little spouts on it. I knew a practitioner who she uses those in a crock pot, and it works really well. Anyway, you'll figure out your system, but this is the simplest way I know of to warm oil. And you can add some to your hands once you're in your nice little cozy abhyanga nest, and you can start with your head. Now, if you don't want to get oil in your hair, that's fine, but just know that the head, at least doing some oil on the very top of the head where these major marma are, is a good idea. So starting at the periphery, you can also start with your arms, start with a hand and work your way towards the center, but you're starting at the periphery and working your way down. You're going to want to include the face. You can use a nice face oil if you'd like. There's so many good marma on the face, so definitely make sure you include the face. You're also going to want to include your ears. The ears have lots of good marma and they reflex to the whole body. It's just a major site of vata dosha in the ears. So adding some oil to your ears and kind of getting into all those little nooks and crannies, making sure the ears are well oiled, neck, shoulders. As you work down the limbs up towards the body, you're going to want to be using circular motions around your joints. That's going to help guide the oil into the joint space. And if you are someone with breast tissue, this is a good idea to do a really thorough breast massage, breast exam as part of your routine breast exam. This is a good time to do it. When you get to your abdomen, you're going to be wanting to work from your right iliac area up and around, sort of like you're tracing your colon, and give some love to the colon. And then again, from your legs, you can go from your ankles, from your feet, up the legs, up to the torso of the body. One tricky part of doing a self-abhyanga is getting your back. So the way that I like to do that is to get a squeeze bottle here, like the one pictured. And from the base of the neck, you can pour the oil. I like to squeeze the oil from the base of the neck so that it runs down the spine. It's a little messy, so make sure you have a towel on the ground to catch any drips. But that's a good way to make sure you get that whole spine covered in oil. And then you can kind of like use your arms as best you can, depending on your flexibility, and work the oil into the back. I usually like to do my feet last while sitting on the edge of the tub. And the feet, just like the ears, reflex to the whole body. It's a really important part to include. But do make sure after oiling your feet that you wipe them off well so that you don't slip. Please do that. Also, if you stroke in the opposite direction of hair growth, that's going to help the oil penetrate deeper into the follicle. And into the nostrils, this is also a time that you can oil the inside of the nose. You can dip your little fingers in oil, the pinky finger, and just work the inside of the nasal canal with oil. It's going to help that's going to help the health of the mucous membranes, and it's a major site of prana. If we have time, we'll talk a little bit about nasya therapy. And okay, so you've done your abhyanga, you're nice and oily. If you can let this sit for a few minutes on the skin while staying nice and warm. If you have a dedicated oil robe, an abhyanga robe that you're going to wash carefully later with OxyClean, you can use that and stay warm. If you don't have time for all that, which honestly I usually don't, you can just jump right into the shower and let that nice hot water start to open your pores and let the oil sink in. You can continue to do your oil massage in the shower. It's going to feel really good. And like we said earlier, you don't want to soap off. You don't want to wash the oil off with soap. Obviously, use soap where you need to use soap, but leave a film of oil on the body. Use that dedicated abhyanga towel to wipe off any excess oil so it doesn't get on your clothes, but to let your body keep some of that oil on throughout the day. And that's my little self-abhyanga routine. We are about 15 minutes out, so I'm going to try to breeze through these next few therapies to share with you guys before we do a little Q&A. And real quick, other ways to benefit from Snehana, you can oil your feet and your head before bed. You can quickly apply oil to joints before getting in the shower. When I don't have time for abhyanga, that's usually what I do. Like I've got some neck issues or like my wrist, and so I'll just apply oil quickly to those places and then jump in the shower. Head and the feet at night. This is a great remedy for insomnia. You can cover up your feet after you oil them with a nice pair of socks that you're okay getting oily. Oil in the ears, oil in the nose. These are really important places to put oil, and also in the colon. So an oil enema is something I'm not going to get into in the slide. It's one of the best remedies for Vata dosha and for Vata disorders is doing an enema, especially an oil enema if it's indicated. So I encourage you to talk to a practitioner about that if you're interested. Oh my gosh, we haven't even done shirodhara. Okay. So I'm going to pretty much breeze through shiro. So shirodhara, this is what we offer at the Pranada Wellness retreats. We offer everybody 2 shirodharas during their stay. This is me doing a shirodhara last year on a client. And shiro means head, dhara means continuous flow. So that's exactly what it is. It's a continuous flow of oil over the forehead, and it can run from 20 minutes to 40 minutes. Indications are any nervous system issues. So this is going to bathe the head, which have those major master marmani for the nervous system. So it's really a nervous system treatment. It's also a treatment for the mind, and it can address issues related to the head, such as migraines and TMJ issues, as well as tinnitus and neck pain. So like I said, warm herbalized oils poured over the head for 20 to 40 minutes. It's usually anchored. The pore is usually anchored around the third eye, around Agnya, marma, and pours over the head, covering all those other marmani. And it nourishes the nervous system. It calms the mind. It's balancing for the hormones, and it usually induces a deep feeling of relaxation. So it works on the nervous system as the head is the root of the nervous system. And it activates all of these marmani. Some people will see light and colors. Some people will have a spiritual experience. It's kind of psychedelic. That's why I included this picture from Alex Bray. But that's not, everybody's experience is completely different. Some people just fall asleep. And some people, for example, if you have unprocessed experiences, like post-traumatic stress disorder, you can benefit from shiro, but just know that these experiences may start to digest during shiro. So I have been doing shiro on a friend in the past who had PTSD, and it was uncomfortable for her just because the thoughts and all of the things just kept bubbling up, but she knew it was good for her. And we did a session of shiros and it got better. It should not be done during an acute illness. Obviously, none of them should. People with very high pitta. I've only ever done shirodhara with oils, and you can use something like buttermilk, which would be indicated for people with a lot of pitta. The head is the site of pitta. The head can be hot. So shirodhara could overheat somebody who has very high pitta. It's also not suitable for people with lots of kapha in the head. Again, if you have lots of sinus congestion and you're just putting oil on top of that, that could aggravate kapha. So I'm going to briefly run through these next therapies because I think that they are important. So Nasya therapy, this is exactly what it looks like here. It's the administration of medicated oil into the nose. This is a brand of Nasya oil that Dr. Lad formulated, and it's probably my favorite, Super Nasya oil. You can buy it at Banyan Botanicals, or you can get it at the Ayurvedic website, Ayurvedic Institute's website. Dr. Lad would say the nose is the door to consciousness. So the nostrils themselves are sort of the opening to prana vahashrota. So this therapy is going to be really a treatment for prana, and prana rules the body. Prana is the flow of life force through the body. This is a very life force promoting therapy. And it works on the mind, the nervous system, and prana. It can also be used there's many different types of Nasya oil. Some Nasya oils are actually purgative, so they're designed to create like a purgation of the head and of the sinuses. Super Nasya oil is not that, but there's still, if you use Nasya oil over time, you will maybe have a little bit of a purgative action, as the nose is a pathway of elimination for excess dosha in the head. Indications could be sinus congestion, prana disorders, migraine headaches, TMJ, ear aches. This will help to treat all of that through treating prana in the head. And it has a wide field of action. I was looking through my notes, and there was something in there about how Nasya oil lubricating the nose will help to lubricate the colon and will help to treat the colon. So when you do Nasya oil, and I'm going to run through it really quick, how you could do it yourself. You're going to want to not do Nasya too close to eating or bathing. Oil and water don't mix. So to breathe in like water after you have irrigated your nose with oil could create problems. So just space it out away from showering and eating. And don't do it if you have an acute condition. Children under 7 and adults over 80. Also, Dr. Lad has said should not do Nasya therapy. And how to administer Nasya. So you pick up a bottle of Super Nasya oil. What do you do with it? So this is my little explanation of how you could administer this yourself. I would suggest getting in a comfortable position where you can have your head tilted back. So this could be on the edge of a bed or on the edge of a couch, but you're going to want to have your head very well tilted back. You can apply to start 3 to 5 drops in each nostril. I definitely do more of that sometimes, but if you're just starting out, go slow. So 3 to 5 drops would be a nice dose. And let the oil drain back into the sinuses. I like to let the oil drain on its own. I like kind of that feeling of it going up before I give a big sniff, but you can sniff it up immediately, but just that big sniff is going to help bring the oil deeper into the sinuses. While staying in this comfortable position with your head nicely tilted back, if you have the time, do a face massage, a head massage. Really work this area around the sinuses. This is going to help. It's going to feel incredible. And it's also going to help that oil work its magic. And if you do have that sensation of the oil going down your throat, which if you start to use more heavy doses of oil in the sinuses, that might happen. Just feel free to expectorate that at your nearest sink. You don't want to swallow. It's not going to hurt you if you swallow it, but the oil is pulling excess dosha out. It's pulling things out that you don't want in there. So to, take it out of the body from the nearest exit is a good idea. So if you don't have time for all this, but you still want the benefits of nasi oil, like we talked about during abhyanga, you can dip your finger in the oil and just kind of work the inside of your each nostril with the oil, and then give a big sniff, and that's gonna give you a nice dose of the nasi oil. Okay, so we only have a few minutes left. So I am going to skip the last little part. I was going to share with you about Karna Purana, pretty self-explanatory. It's therapeutic application of oil in the ears. And Netrabasti. So Netrabasti is an eye bath it's a special eye bath using ghee. And this is one that you'll need a practitioner for. Pretty hard to do this one yourself. Ghee is extremely beneficial for the eyes. The eyes are the gateway to the nervous system in Ayurvedic anatomy. And so this treats not only the eye, but the entire nervous system. Really great therapy. And a way you could kind of DIY this would be to do like a drop of ghee, a very clean, organic ghee, nice and melted to body temperature, to put a drop of that in the eyes at bedtime. Castor oil can also be used in the eye very safely, very beneficial for the eyes. Ideally at bedtime so that you don't have walk around with cloudy vision. Rose water is great as well. These are some resources here I've put together. Banyan's a great resource. Muzda, this is where I get most of my oils. He makes really amazing high potency Ayurvedic oils in small batches. Ayurveda is great. I love their products. I use their toothpaste and their soap. Kerala Ayura makes super luxurious oils. Gary and Son is great too. And there's many more. If you know of some that you love, you can drop it in the chat. Let us know about that. So thank you so much. It has been such an honor to be here with you and to share the little bit that I know about Ayurvedic therapies. I'm not a talker. I'm not somebody who likes to talk. So the fact that I've been able to talk for an hour and a half is really a testament to how much I love Ayurveda. So I'm going to look and see if we have any questions. And I'll try to get through a few of them. Okay, first question I have seen come through is abhyanga good for small kids on a daily basis? And I would say absolutely yes. Abhyanga can be very great for small children on a daily basis. Since every person and every child is different and has different things going on constitutionally, I would say talk to an Ayurvedic practitioner about it. Do some research. Abhyanga is pretty harmless, like we said. Really, the only things to be aware of are, especially for children, would be like a high toxicity or acute injuries or very high kapha and things like that. But I know that I think traditionally babies born an Ayurvedic approach to caring for your babies to give them an oil massage every day. And so, yeah, I think Ayurveda would be great for kids. Question from Nadia, is abhyanga good for, Is argan oil used in Ayurveda? I haven't seen it too much used in my experience, but every oil has medicinal benefits, and I'm sure argan oil has its own. I don't know a ton about them aside from its use in hair care. Let's see. Pure A2 ghee. You know what? I know that there is a source of pure A2 ghee, and I don't have it at the top of my head. So I'll make a note of that and try to get back to you about that. How to restore eyesight and when it might be better to do a laser correction. So I didn't mention this, but one of the contraindications to adding oil into the eye is cataract surgery. So just know that before you apply ghee to the eye. Cataract surgery, having an artificial lens. Dr. Lott has said the oil could get underneath the lens and cloud it. So just know that that's a contraindication there. And like I said, we have naturopathia, which is good for the eyes. Castor oil is good for the eyes. Rose drops. There are certain eye drops that have, Dr. Lott calls them cactus drops, and I can't tell you exactly what's in them, but there are certain eyes that can kind of relieve kapha accumulations on the eyes. But I think this question is out of my scope of practice. So I encourage you, Nadia, to find a physician or an Ayurvedic doctor who can better address that question. And let's see, next question for intestinal colon issues. Which oil for abhyanga? I would say depends on the colon issue. So depending on whether it's vata, pitta, or kapha in nature, I think I would need more information to answer that question. What Ayurvedic techniques or oils are best for rashes and dry skin? So it depends on the type of rash. So every rash is different. You can have a really oozing rash, which is more kapha. You can have a very dry, flaky rash, which is more vata. And then you can have a hot, inflamed rash, which is more pitta. So it would depend on the type of rash. If this is more of a pitta vata rash, which most rashes are pitta, and then with dryness, that's vata. I would say an oil such as like neem and coconut. That's one thing that I've seen used quite frequently for eczema and different kinds of skin issues like that. That's been pretty effective. Neem is a great oil for the skin, and then coconut's going to have that cooling property, so it shouldn't irritate the pitta part of the rash. Let's see, another question. For constipation issues, do you recommend putting ghee on the belly button? That is so cute. Yes. So belly, Dr. Lott would very often talk about nabi chikitsa. So adding a certain oil to the belly button to help with different issues. So constipation, adding ghee to the belly button. I don't think it would hurt anything. I think that you might, yeah, give it a try and see how it goes. And then also be trying other things to address constipation. Triphala is one of those things that, as you probably already know about it if you're asking this question. Diet and lifestyle things. Again, I think I need more information to better answer that question. Okay, I think that's the end of the question. So I'm so glad I got to get through all of this in time. I'm so grateful to all of you for being here, all of my teachers, supporters. Again, this is an offering of the Pranada Wellness Center. If you are interested in Ayurveda and Ayurvedic therapies, please check out Pranada Wellness and consider coming to our next event. Oline Adams is our director, and he's going to be giving our next talk in the coming months on osteopathy and all of the other amazing things that he brings to these events. So I'm going to close with a little prayer and just bow to you all. Thank you so much for being here. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvi Navadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Bye everyone.